Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. Today we're going to be putting a 2-inch lift kit on a 2014 Ranger 900 XP. Today is December the 12th. As you all know, our area was affected by some pretty serious tornadoes. Friday night, December 10th, that was actually started probably about 2 hours after we finished this job. Just like to ask everyone to keep those people in your thoughts and prayers. So let's jump in and get this started. This is a 2014 Ranger 900 XP. Has stock aluminum wheels with 25-inch tires. We'll be putting on a 2-inch lift kit and going from 25-inch tires to 28-inch tires. We'll be putting on 28-inch Mega Mayhems, 9-inch wide on the front, 11-inch wide on the rear, keeping the stock width on the tires. One thing to note, if you run the stock steel wheels, you will need to use 1.5-inch spacers on the rear. However, since we're using the aluminum wheels, we will not have to install the spacers. Let's look at the before picture with the stock suspension, stock tires. If you want to see the after picture, I guess you'll have to stick around and check out the end of the video. You want to start by jacking up the vehicle and placing jack stands. I prefer to put them right behind the wheels on the frame. Initially, I had this thing jacked up on 4 jack stands. Luckily, I had 3 of the tires left because one of the jack stands actually collapsed on me. Going to start by loosening the bolt on the top of the front shock. I actually ended up taking the shock completely out just for ease of access. I'm going to take the front lift bracket. You're going to put a bolt in the top point and in the small tab. Then you'll install 2 washers on that bolt. This will go in the front side of the frame with the lift bracket outside the frame. Then you'll place 2 spacers and your other lift bracket goes inside the frame. Then you'll put your 2 nuts on. There's no torque specified. I just fastened them as tight as I could. This is the point when the jack stand actually collapsed on me. So if you have Harbor Freight jack stands that you're trusting your life with, go ahead and throw those in the trash. One other thing to note is the small tab on this triangle lift bracket must go towards the top. Then you'll refasten your shock to the bottom tab of the bracket. The other side, I started on the right-hand side. The left side is the same. As far as bracket positioning, it'll still go in front of the frame. All your bolt heads will face towards the front, except on the sway bar relocation bracket. So next you're going to jack up the rear end, put it on jack stands, remove the rear wheels. The instructions say to loosen the sway bar nut. I actually found that it was much easier to manipulate that shock absorber if you completely removed it. However, you'll need a second set of hands to get it back on once you go to put this thing back together. It's easier to go from the top when loosening this shock absorber. Of course, it's a 15 millimeter bolt, 15 millimeter nut. I found it easier with 2 wrenches. Once you get the nuts off these bolts on these shock absorbers, they come out fairly easily if you just grab the suspension arm, wiggle it up and down while you're pulling on the bolt or pushing on the back side. Usually they slide right out. Take your rear lift tab, you'll put a bolt through the short tab. Place 2 washers. So take this, you have to run your hand under the frame. Put the short tab there. Come around to the outside of the frame. Again, the top hole, you put your bolt through. 2 washers. And we'll come up. I bought 3 like so. Now the tricky part comes, especially one-handed. This is going to be upside down probably. Put your spacer. And you slide the other bracket in. You get the inside done. This is what it should look like. We'll go over to the outside now. You'll have to put your spacer on the bolt and just swing the bracket up, slide it in, fit your bolt through. Apparently I forgot to film putting the shock back on. It's just like the front. You line it up on the bottom hole. You put the, I used the stock shock bolts because I found on the front that the frame was actually too close to use the provided bolts with the kit. So we're using the shock, or the stock shock bolts to put the shocks back on. You won't put the swing arm back on this side just yet because we will be relocating it. You just kind of wall it around until you find the hole. The left side is going to be the same process. One thing to note is there is an electronic module right next to the shock absorber nut. You want to take special care not to crack that by putting pressure on it. Other than that, it's the same process. Now let's get this sway bar relocated. Okay, next we're going to clean around this element and remove it. We're going to remove these 2 bolts that hold the bracket onto the bracket for the sway bar. There's 1 on each side, so we'll have 2 elements, 4 bolts. This is a 7mm. See that. On the sway bar bracket, there's 4 holes. 1 of them is threaded. Take the element, thread it in. You don't want to over tighten these, they will break off. Now we'll remove these 2 bolts on each side. On this unit, they're carriage bolts with a 13mm nut. Here's the left side. We'll now go around to the right side, do the same thing, take the 2 bolts out. Then we'll install the bracket. We'll also have to drill out the hole where the element was initially. I believe we drill that out to a 5/16, and that will be one of the mounting holes for the new bracket. We have the sway bar off. Of course, if you're replacing the sway bar with a aftermarket or just replacing your Polaris sway bar, now would be the time to inspect everything, look at the new bushings. Gonna go where the element was. There's a small hole. I'm gonna drill that out with a 5/16 drill bit. Okay, so you're going to take your sway bar relocation bracket. Put the bolt in for the side opposite where you installed the element. Go to the top hole like that. Then we'll come around to the back side. Start on that. So we'll do that on both sides. We've got the bracket on both sides. We'll line up our bolt hole. That's the hole you just drilled out. And we'll install the nuts, bolts and nuts included with the kit, top and bottom. Your element should fit through the bottom hole that your sway bar was previously mounted to. So once you've got those 3 bolts on each side tightened up, you're going to raise your sway bar. I'll put this nut back on just so I wouldn't lose it. You'll have to push this over and raise the sway bar. I need both hands to do that. So, okay, there we are. And we'll put that nut back on. I'm not going to tighten that until I have the other side in too. Give me a little bit of movement. I'll be right back with you guys. So if you did take the sway bar completely off like I did, you may have to get some assistance to get that line back up. It's not that hard, you just can't be on both sides at the same time. I believe after we tighten this up, all we've got left, a couple of shots of grease to each side, and put the wheels back on. We're ready to ride. Once we get the wheels put back on, we'll call Briggs over to inspect the work, and we'll get to those after pictures. Hey, so if y'all liked the video, subscribe to our page. There'll be plenty more to come. Thanks for watching.